Okay, so we are at our last reflection for the class, and I'm going to be discussing how Black, Hispanic, and white populations vary between here in Europe and back home in the States. And so Florida itself is a unique situation in terms of population demographics. We have a very heavy Hispanic presence. And so that population is on the rise. There are many people who come to Florida from Puerto Rico, Cuba, Mexico. And so that is something that varies between here and back home. Here, many people are, I'm in Paris right now, so many people here are from Spain itself and are visiting. And so that Spanish itself does vary. However, the population in Florida is growing, and we actually have the second largest Hispanic population in all of the United States after Texas. And I am from Orlando specifically, and there are many Hispanic individuals in Orlando and in Miami. Those are kind of the two hubs in Florida specifically, and so I've had great exposure my whole life to the Hispanic population, and it definitely has a heavy influence on the state of Florida as a whole and Floridian culture. We also do have a relatively large Black population, and that is also growing. However, in Europe, I really haven't seen very many Black people in general. It's definitely been overwhelming majority of white people, and that is definitely the comparison back home as well. There's also some discrepancies back home in terms of access and in terms of income, and so many people who are white live in more affluent areas, and many people who are Black or Hispanic live in less fortunate environments, and many of them are actually subject to the cycle of poverty. And that is really how the United States has that set up, where there's less access, there is worse education, less opportunities, and then that cycle kind of repeats itself. I'm not too familiar with how that works here in France. However, there is that discrepancy back home of where those populations typically live. Here, there definitely is a mix of different ethnicities in terms of white people. However, the overwhelming majority is French, whereas back home we do have many immigrants from many different European countries, and so we kind of refer to people as white instead of German, Polish, or Italian. However, here there's a very obvious distinction, especially with the language. And so in terms of the Black and Hispanic populations, there definitely can be a language barrier back home, and that can also decrease access as well. And so I'm actually very surprised here at how little I have seen of those two minority populations. I was expecting to see more. However, it's been very eye-opening to be immersed in this culture and kind of see how that balance or lack of balance really is comparable to back home. So bye. Thank you so much for listening to my reflections. It's been a lovely experience, and I can't wait to see how everything I learned from this program will make me a more culturally competent provider.